Welcome to Vlogmas Day 1. I just finished recording Vlogmas Day 1 and it is long, and so that's why I'm kind of redoing the intro here. I'll probably play the original intro or part of it, but I just wanted to let you know, hey, it's kind of long. And I forgot I was going to do something during Vlogmas. So every day of Vlogmas, I'm going to share with you a Christmas movie that I like or love. This list, maybe I don't love every single one, but I like it. And I put out a list a few years ago of Christmas movies and where you could watch them. And so I have that list, and I'm just going to go through it. And I will let you know where you can watch it as well. So that way you can direct yourselves to whatever platform. I have my phone in front of me. So the first one I'm going to say for today's Christmas movie is White Christmas. Classic. Just we've watched it growing up, multiple times during the season. I still watch it multiple times during the holiday season. I haven't watched it yet this year. Maybe I will turn it on today. And I was just going to look up where it plays. I think it's on Netflix, and I did not prepare. Let's see. No, White Christmas now is on Prime Video, so Amazon. It's interesting that that's the only place that has it right now, but Prime Video, White Christmas. I don't know what my favorite scene is. Probably like sisters, and then just the ending is the whole thing is great. There's some little long drawn out spots with the music and the dancing, but overall, love White Christmas. It's the top. When I do these movies, I'm not going to give you like my top. I'm not going to list them in order of preference. But White Christmas, if I was listing in order of preference, would be at the top. So let's get into Vlogmas Day 1, which is a very long about me. Welcome to Vlogmas. I decided to do this, I don't know, about a month ago. I don't know if I could say, oh, I've always wanted to do Vlogmas. This is a stretch for me. I'm not good at off the cuff talking to the camera, and our content generally on this channel is much more cut up and what is in front of us. We're showing you what we're seeing as we are traveling and doing things around Central Florida. So this will be a stretch for me. The rules for this, so that I can stay zoned in on rules. So I'm going to post a video every day from December 1st through December 24th. So until Christmas Eve. So 24 videos. I'm a planner, so I've already kind of been planning out, okay, where am I going to take you guys along with me? TJ is not going to be traveling with me this month. I'm headed to Oklahoma City for a week in December, and actually just a few days from when this is posting. So yeah, there's no rules of it has to be the exact day day before the date of posting. I'm not following that. We really only started filming a few things for Vlogmas this week. So TJ will appear in Vlogmas, but I'm going to be the driver of it and doing most of the editing as well for it. So buckle up, I guess. If you're new here, I'm Brian. My content partner and life partner is TJ, and he really should do an about me himself. Maybe I'll encourage him to do kind of about me. But this first Vlogmas video, I just wanted to do kind of an about me. I don't think I've ever recorded one of those. When I first started content, I really started on TikTok, and so I would do lives on TikTok. And I would share more about myself in those lives, I guess, like just sitting talking to people. And that was during the pandemic. So we all had lots of time on our hands. And that's when I started creating content. So, and lives on TikTok were something that I did quite frequently. And I would kind of get to know people, and people would get to know me through those lives. But I never really sit down and chat. So I wanted for the first Vlogmas to be kind of a sit down and chat. Let's get into it. I'm gonna kind of tell my story and kind of places I've been. I born and raised in Sacramento, California. Actually, technically Carmichael. I've ran into one or two people in my years that actually know of Carmichael, so I like to put that out there. But generally, when somebody's talking to me and asking, "Oh, where are you from?" or "Where did you grow up?" I say Sacramento, just because Carmichael is a suburb of Sacramento. So I grew up there. My parents, I always like to throw in kind of like what started your like travel, your spark of travel. And we didn't travel very far. The furthest growing up that we traveled probably was, I guess, Missouri on a road trip. I think we did 2 road trips to Missouri in my childhood. And then we also did a road trip when I was very young. You know what? We did travel quite a bit now that I'm like saying it out loud, but it wasn't like a yearly, like we're traveling to a faraway destination yearly. We traveled when I was very young. We drove up to Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And then we also did 1 year, we were gonna go to visit my uncle in Wisconsin. I think it was, I don't know if it was over a summer or something, but my uncle was gonna move to California, or the West Coast at least, the same region that we were in. So mom and dad was like, well, we're not gonna go to Wisconsin now because he's moving to California, back to California. Maybe he was moving to Oregon. I don't know where he moved at that time. So they changed their flight over to Hawaii. So I don't know what made them choose that. I think that they could exchange the tickets to be about the same price. So I think I was 6 or 7, maybe, yeah, right around there probably. And we went to Hawaii. And I still remember Hawaii, and I tell this people because they'll ask, "Oh, have you ever been to Hawaii?" And I say yes. I don't remember tons and tons. I do remember like little highlights of that trip, but I do remember a certain feeling that you get when you're in Hawaii. We were on Oahu. We drove around the whole island. We explored a lot. It was a very frugal trip. We were staying somewhere not right on the beach in Waikiki. And it was, we had a small little tin can of a rental car, I believe. And my parents, I guess all that to say, my parents were really good at taking road trips with us. We did a lot of camping. For sure, we were camping up until high school, probably up until sophomore, junior year. I mean, we were camping very frequently. So lots of camping. And growing up in California, there was always something to see, a new place to go. The only place in California I've never been is San Diego. It's the only place. And whenever I say that, people are like, "What? You've never been to San Diego?" And yes, unfortunately, I've never been to San Diego, but I hear that the weather is amazing in San Diego. So my parents, I guess you could say, ignited the spark. I don't think they intentionally ignited the spark for travel and exploration or not being afraid to go places. I don't think they necessarily intentionally did that. I think that they were doing the best that they could. We grew up very middle class, lower middle class. We were not flying off to Europe or even, down to a resort in Mexico. I'll talk about Disneyland. So Disneyland, my parents' rule was at 5 years old is when you could go to Disneyland on their dime. So my sister is 3 years younger than me. So when I turned 5, they took me to Disneyland. And my sister, who was 3, she stayed home with my grandparents. And I remember that trip. Once again, I remember like little pockets of it. There's like little moments. I don't remember a lot from that. Um, just know that when you take your kids under the age of 5 to Disney, you're taking them because of you. You're taking them to get those pictures, and of course they're going to smile and have a good time, but they're not necessarily going to remember that. My parents' rule was no strollers, so we didn't have strollers. So that kind of backs up my belief that, you know, the less strollers in a park, the better. I never had one. And then the next time we went to Disneyland wasn't until my sister turned 5. So, that would be 2 years later, then we returned to Disneyland for my sister's 5th birthday. And we did not go to Disney on a yearly basis, and sometimes we would drive. It's about an 8-hour drive from Sacramento to Anaheim. And we would go intermittently, if that's the right pronunciation. We would go maybe let's say every 3 years or so. And then I think there was a trip early in, I guess it was high school. I don't know what age I was, but that's kind of what like triggered. I grew up with Disney, right? But that's what triggered my understanding of the parks and kind of like what that was and what that meant. And like this, not that I thought that it was like something common because we didn't have it at home, but realizing that it was something special and I wanted to learn more about it. So in high school, I should have pulled out books because I still have some of the books. I devoured books about Disney Imagineering, about Walt Disney, and so really my love of Disney was surrounded and kind of rooted in Walt and the Imagineers and really what they built from the basically ground up, especially Walt building from the ground up. So that's where my love came in, and I knew during that time that I want to work for Disney. So I researched and I found out about the college program, and the college program in California, really, it was there, but they didn't provide housing for you. You had to find your own housing. And for those that know, Northern California, where I'm from, is like a separate state from Southern California. I really didn't know anyone in Southern California. I had some friends in college down there, but no one with like true roots or anything. And Walt Disney World here in Florida, their college program, they assigned you to housing and you didn't have to look for housing. They had bus transportation from the housing to your job. And so I was like, that's what I'm going to do. It's just going to be easier. I talked about, should I take my car? Should I not take my car? And we landed on that I wouldn't take my car. So after high school, I did like 2 semesters of what do they call it? A community college, American River College, which that was probably my favorite college experience out of I guess I went to 3 different colleges to get my degree. That was probably my favorite experience. I really liked American River. But as soon I don't know how long, I guess I got 1 semester under my belt. And then spring, my second semester, I went to go interview. That back then, the college program recruiters would actually visit campus. They would present a presentation, and then you would sign up for an interview. And then after that interview, you're going to get your acceptance letter or not. So for my college program, recruitment, it happened at Sacramento State. And so that wasn't where I was going to school, but I went to campus to go see the presentation. And then I think the next day, mom didn't, I don't know, think mom came with me to that. I wasn't really the type to have mom come with me. She didn't come with me to like enroll in American River or anything. I was always independent. This video is going to turn into way longer than I thought it was going to be. But like in kindergarten, for instance, mom dropped me off, you know, at my first day of kindergarten, and I was like, okay, mom, you can go now. That's the story. So I never really, my parents were very supportive. I think mom probably was hesitant about what I was getting myself into with the college program, you know, because her son was going to go across the country from California to Florida. But she did come with me to the interview. Of course, she didn't sit with me at the interview, but she did come with me, I think. Maybe she did come to the presentation. I don't remember now, but saw the presentation. I think the next day I had to go back for the interview. That was one of the last years that for college program, they did in-person interviews, and they started really going to phone, and then eventually, I think now maybe they do like Zoom or video calls for interviews. I'm not really sure. Let me know in the comments what they do now. But I got it, so that changed my path for sure. I got it. I moved here. I did Main Street operations. I was assigned to Main Street operations. When you get accepted to college program, though, you only know like if you're going to be attractions operations, if you're going to be food and beverage, if you're going to be entertainment. So I knew going that I was going to be attractions, which is, I think that was my top pick. So I got my top pick. I don't know if you would have told me, like, if you would have put up all the attractions next to each other and said, you're going to get Main Street, that I would have been thrilled beforehand, because Main Street, they have the train. There's not really any other, like, attractions. So my role on Main Street was turnstiles. That was considered operations. So I believe it still is to this day. It's an operational role, and that's what it's classified as. So turnstiles is where I basically spent most of my college program, and I was cross-trained over to parade and audience control. So in the evenings, it was Spectro Magic, and during the daytime, I don't even remember what the daytime parade was called. I know that Walt, an animator, led that parade. And he was supposed to look like Walt and be Walt. And so I don't remember what the name of the daytime parade was. So I was there for, I did college program fall of 2025. And I went home right after. I was not one of those people to extend. However, back then, for some reason, they would keep you on a seasonal if you wanted to, and I said, keep me seasonal. So I stayed seasonal, and then I returned home to California, and like a few months later, my friend was saying, hey, I have an open room in my condo. Do you want to come live with me? Do you want to move back here? And I said, yes, that's what I want to do. So by in June 2005, in June 2005, I was moving back to Florida, and this time I was driving. So I packed up my car and did a road trip across the country. That car, it was my first car. It was a Ford Escort. I think it was a 1997 or something Ford Escort, and the check engine light came on in Arizona. And I don't think the check engine light ever went off again, the life of that car, and I don't think it lasted, but I think it lasted me maybe maybe it lasted me 8 or 9 more months, and then I had to get a new one. But anyway, yeah, driving across country, and that was interesting, and it was packed to the brim. So I then worked Main Street for a little longer there at Magic Kingdom, and something was happening at that time and getting ready to happen, and it was called Year of a Million Dreams, which was a celebration at Walt Disney World. That was in the year 2026. It technically, I think it started to ramp up at the end of 2005, and I was the second. I went for it. So they were hiring positions for it, temporary assignment for you to go be a Dream Squad member, and those Dream Squad members would be doing prize fulfillment, as well as when they weren't doing prize fulfillment, they were assigned to a land or an area of the park where they would be interacting with guests, doing magical moments, assisting the operations in that land, and just being kind of like a ambassador for Year of a Million Dreams. So I went for that. I didn't get the first round of, I didn't go through the first round of interviews. I went through the second round, but I still was semi-part of the opening team for that, because I started in January, and that's when officially Year of a Million started. So I love that role. It was fun. My favorite thing about that role was they would give away the Castle Suite every night. I did get to see the Castle Suite, so I have been up to the Castle Suite. So every day they would give away the Castle Suite. And so my favorite part of that role, I was generally the afternoons into the evenings. And so I think a lot of times my shift would start like around 2 o'clock. I would come in and my first thing would be to receive the Castle family. So the winners of the Castle Suite, it could happen anywhere across, I think, the 4 parks. I don't think it could happen at Disney Springs or Downtown Disney, as it was called at the time. I don't think that it could happen at Downtown Disney, but I could be wrong. But it generally happened in the parks, and it could have been that it only happened in the parks. And so no matter where they were, they had to get, if they weren't at Magic Kingdom, if they didn't win it while inside the Magic Kingdom, they would have to adjust their schedule, because you won it that day and that night you're staying. So imagine, I'm sure there was many times where families had to rearrange their travel, because it could have been their departure day. And if they're winning the Castle Suite, what are they going to do? They have to get back to the Magic Kingdom. You're not going to give up. And I wonder how many people gave up the Castle Suite. Like, there's some people that don't know what is happening to them. And so I'm sure that some people even gave up the Castle Suite. But anyway, my favorite thing was, because I was Magic Kingdom Dream Squad, I got to receive those families a lot of the time. And so we would receive the families at Magic Kingdom as the Dream Squad for that park. We would be with the family through the parade, because they would Grand Marshal the parade. And then from Grand Marshaling the parade and watching the parade in a VIP section, once they were finished with Grand Marshal, then we would take them to the Castle Suite, and we would hand them off to Guest Relations, and then Guest Relations would handle the experience of going up to the Castle Suite. So that was a lot of fun, because you were always receiving a family that was super excited. It probably was a whirlwind, because they won it that morning, or maybe even like within 90 minutes ago. They probably had to get back to their hotel, pack the overnight bag, and then they had an itinerary of things that they were going to be doing for the rest of the day. And then, of course, staying in the suite. So that was a lot of fun. So what happened next was, I was there for about 4 months. Sometime in, I think, March or April, I looked at my schedule, and I was only being scheduled part-time hours now, even though I wanted full-time. I needed full-time hours, because that's the only thing I was doing. I wasn't in school anymore. I had taken a break from school, and I was working at Disney. So what had happened was they had me part-time status, and I didn't know I was part-time status. And by being part-time status, you can cap out on hours in terms of how much you can be scheduled full-time. So even though they brought me over in a part-time capacity, and I didn't really know. Before, I was seasonal status, but you can work full-time hours seasonal status, I believe. But anyway, I capped out on hours. They started to only schedule me like I think max 32, and I was like, I can't live off that. And I don't think that there was any way to change me to full-time status. And at that point, I was kind of good with Dream Squad. Like it was great. It was a great experience, but I think I was done with being, out in the parks. It was starting to get hot. It was the spring. It starts to get hot early here, and so I knew somebody who was a fellow Dream Squad cast member, Barbie. She was on our team, and Barbie said, "Oh, you should come join me, Brian," because Barbie was getting ready to go too. She was going back to her home location, which was Polynesian. So she said, "You should come over to resorts. You're in their air conditioning. Um, you know, it's definitely set hours, etc." So I was like, okay. So I went over to the casting building, which casting building is still there. And I walked into the casting building and I asked for a Polynesian concierge, Disney's Polynesian Resort, and I asked for concierge. And they didn't really bat an eye. They're like, okay. I think having Dream Squad helped. And that I was coming out of that temporary assignment from Dream Squad. So I was kind of vetted because of that. I did go in for an interview, but it was really didn't mean too much, I don't think. Like, I got the job, like it wasn't an issue. I don't even know how fast that all happened, but it must have been pretty fast because I would have not been happy with just getting 32 hours a week. So I went over to Polynesian. I was there for like 2.5 years. It feels like longer than that, but it really was. It wasn't too long. And I was concierge. So I started as a concierge at the front desk. They train you front desk first, then you go over to the concierge desk in the lobby in the front desk area. Then I was trained club concierge, so there is club level at deluxe resorts at Walt Disney World. Club level gives you access to special concierge people just for your rooms, and then it gives you access to a lounge where you can have complimentary food and beverages throughout the day. So I did train club concierge, and then I did club lounge, and I would just service the lounge and help out. I love doing that because the chefs were really nice, and you just basically got people's drinks for them and made sure the food was good. And the food wasn't even that big of a responsibility because you had a chef there each night that was bringing the food in and helping with the display of the food. So I love those shifts, and the guests are just happy up there, getting their food. So I'm telling you everything. All right, so I did that for a while. At that point, when I was working there, and this all kind of connects later, I met my dear friend Eder, and Eder was on a year program. J1 visa for a year from Brazil, basically doing a hospitality program and working hospitality. And then he had other fellow Brazilians that came with him during his time frame, and I met a whole bunch of other Brazilians, and we would hang out quite a bit, and so that's important to know. So that I met Eder there, because that would kind of change my trajectory as well in life. So then I decided I wanted to get college out of the way. It was the end of 2028. So basically I was at the Polynesian from mid-2026, I would say, 2027, and then for most of 2028. And my dad, I decided I was going to fly, back up. I decided I was going to go back to school get my 4-year bachelor's. And I knew that if I would have stayed at Walt Disney World, going to UCF or wherever, getting my bachelor's, I would be really doing that part-time and having to work full-time. Because my parents did not support me in that way, like sending money and stuff. They would help me with some like car repair stuff here and there, but they were not like financing my life here in Florida. It was me, and so I decided, you know what? Let me just go back and focus on school full time. So that's what I did. I basically said, hey, Mom and Dad, can I move back in? I am basically moving back in, and I'm going to finish university in Oklahoma, which they had moved to Oklahoma from California while I was working for Disney. I'm sure that could be a whole different story, and you might have questions about that. But they did move to Oklahoma. So my sister was there too. She was attending university in Oklahoma. Basically, my mom, my dad, my sister migrated. Sister was living in the dorms. Mom and dad had a brand new house. I moved into that house December 2028. My dad came to get me basically, and we drove from Orlando to Oklahoma City. We drove straight through, 19-hour drive. I thought Dad was going to drive more than he did, but he didn't. But that was okay. We drove straight through because I was just like, let's just go. Let's just get there and be done with this drive. Anywhere on the, in my opinion, anywhere on the, past Arkansas, on this side of the country, it's boring to drive. It's just green on either side. In California, when you're driving long distances and in the West, there's much more to look at, but it's just boring. So let's just get there as quickly as possible. So that's what we did, 19 hours. And so I went back to university. I did a community college to get my associates. I did my associates, finished up my associates. Then I transferred to the University of Central Oklahoma, UCO. My parents lived in Edmond. UCO is in Edmond. And so I lived with my parents, and I finished up university. And really, I was pretty much done by 2012. And 2012, I forget the time frame. I think 2012, I was going back to Disney for a professional internship. So I applied to a professional internship here at Disney. I got in with the Disney Institute. So it was the summer of 2012 that I moved back to Walt Disney World and did a professional internship. I was there for a year on the professional internship at the Disney Institute. I was a production assistant, and I stayed status at the Disney Institute all the way up to the end of my Disney career. But once that year was over, I think it was like, summer 2013? Summer 2013, there was no place for me at Disney Disney Institute. For those who don't know, Disney Institute is the external training arm of the Walt Disney Company. So if a company, let's say Chevrolet, which they were actually a client of Disney Institute. Let's say Chevrolet wants to transform their business. They want to transform their leaders with better leadership skills. They want to transform their stores to have better customer service. They could work with Disney Institute, and Disney Institute would build a custom training program and deliver that to as many people within the Chevrolet brand as they wanted to. So that's what Disney Institute is. So I was a production assistant, loved that because every single day was different, met a lot of great people. It wasn't your traditional guest, they were more like clients, and they were people that, even though they might not care about coming to Walt Disney World, they were still away from the office. In general, they were excited to be there, and it was just fun to be part of that and have a different day every single day. If I could be there still, I probably would still be there on the ops side, production assistant side, probably wouldn't pay enough, or I would want what I'd want, but I loved that job because it was different every single day. So 2013, my program is over. I extended it once, so I had a full year there with that program. I went to a temporary assignment to Guest Experience Services, and Guest Experience Services is the team that handles guest complaints, basically. Compliments as well, but most of it is complaints. People know it as the place where all the complaints come to. All the complaints that are post-visit, or anything where a guest wants to communicate with Walt Disney World then they're not on site. Sometimes on site people would kind of creep in, and so we would have to basically reach out to whatever property they were at to have the service recovery happen wherever they were on property. But most of what we got was people that had a visit, maybe they had a complaint about their visit. This team also handled billing as well. So I did learn the billing side, which I like the billing side a little bit more because it's more about numbers. It's more cut and dry. Being Guest Experience Services, you are basically, a lot of it comes through emails. So you're assigned emails, or you pull emails from the system, read the email, and then you need to contact that guest immediately as your email comes in. And so you would call the guest, try to get a phone call, conversation, talk through their issues. If you felt that compensation was needed, if they felt compensation was needed, there would be some middle ground happening of what kind of compensation would be provided. They gave us a lot of power to make decisions. So we weren't having to go to leadership for it. They really empowered us to, if we really needed to give guest service recovery in a monetary form or in a hotel rooms night, back to come back, that we could do that. So we had power. There was a lot of lessons there, a lot of, not necessarily lessons, but I'm sure lessons, but experience of handling people and handling escalated situations that are uncomfortable. So I also learned a lot about nomenclature, how to write emails, really PR training. But Disney will not put that as a PR position. However, what we were doing was very much public relations. It was very much like public relations, training and being approved on how you write emails, pulling email templates, customizing email templates based on the situation. It's really a public relations role. So I did that for a year. At the end of my role with Guest Experience Services, I think it was a situation where I was ready to peace out. So I went back to Disney Institute. What was I doing? I don't know if I was doing production. I think I was still doing part-time production assistant work. And then I went for facilitator of the Backstage Magic Tour, which is a tour that was operated by Disney Institute, and then it took guests, any guest could book it, and it took the guests across all of Walt Disney World property to all the 4 parks plus more, backstage at all 4 of the parks, and the tour guides would basically tell stories and kind of give the business behind the magic, how Walt Disney World really operates at a deeper level, not in the entirety of it, but at a deeper level than what you would get from just the Keys of the Kingdom tour at Magic Kingdom. This really went in on it. So it was all-day tour. I went through the hiring process on that hiring, or audition process for that, and then I got it, and I did that for several months. So then I went to Brazil. You remember I talked about Eder and my other friends, Alini, Flavia, who Eder introduced me to, Roberta. He introduced me to those people while he was here on his program. We had not seen each other I mean, we obviously kept in touch. I kept in touch with Alini and Flavia, and like with Alini and Flavia, we probably even got closer even more after they left and just stayed in communication. And then 2014, both my grandparents had passed. I had an inheritance, and I was like, well, I'm gonna use some of this inheritance to travel. And so that's what I did. And Brian now probably would have done different things with it. I didn't go through all of my inheritance in that sitting, but I would have done things different because, man, the house I could have bought then and the position I could have been in now would be probably a little bit different, but that's okay. I do not regret one thing because it all led me up to who I am now. So, went to Brazil for a month in 2014, got my own place, basically an Airbnb for a month. Our money goes a lot further in Brazil with the conversion. So our money goes pretty far in Brazil. So stayed there for a month, had a great time. I have been talking to a guy earlier in the year that he was on a program, and so I saw him in 2014 when I went. I saw him, we hung out a few times while I was in Brazil. Then I came back to the US, and then I was like, I think I want to move to Brazil. And heart of hearts, it was not just because of him. It was really because I enjoyed my time there. And I had Eder, I had Alini, I had Flavia. And so I made arrangements to basically move to Brazil. And it sounds so crazy, but that's what I did. I sold my car. I sold a lot of things. My friend Lynn, who I lived with, she kept some of my stuff. I think a few boxes in the garage because I didn't really know when I was going to come back. But I left February, I think, of 2015. And I was there in Brazil for a little over a year. I came back in March of 2016. And it was a great experience. Don't regret that at all. Being in a different country, living that, I can go on a whole other tangent story about that for another time, but it was just a great experience. And I recommend if you are young yourself, or even if you're not young, it doesn't matter what age you are, but if you have people, young ones in your life, I highly encourage you to get them to live abroad for at least 6 months and to push them out the door and allow them to experience other parts of the world, because it will help you have a better understanding. It's great. So I highly recommend that. So I decided in 2016, you know what? I was starting to like think, okay, I need to, I guess, work on my career. What am I going to do? And I started to get a lot of activity. My friend Melanie she still works for Booking.com. I was starting to get some movement there, possibly getting a job at Booking. And I was like, you know what? I really think that I just need to get back to the US, because this could turn into something where they call me, they want an in-person, because I think I did some interview there in Brazil, that they could want me at any time to come in for an in-person interview. And I interviewed several times in person there. So I went back to the US in March, stayed with my friend at her house for a few weeks until I transitioned over to where I was going to be living, and didn't ever get a job with Booking, but I wound up getting a job with a real estate company that was founded here in Central Florida. So I started working for them. I worked for a total of 7 years with them, almost like more than 7 years, over 7 year mark. But in the pandemic, I was a pass holder at Disney. I was still going to the Disney parks, all that time, from when I come back in 2016 all the way up, of course, until now. But of course, I had my annual pass during that time, and the pandemic hit, and the parks closed March of 2020, and they were opening back up in July of 2020. And so I started going into the parks, and I started to share my experience going to the parks, back into the parks, on TikTok, and that's where I blew up. So nobody else was really doing it. I mean, of course, there was a few people that were showing what the parks were like, but there wasn't a lot of us at that time. But I was there as parks were opening, showing people on TikTok what it was like. So my following grew. I knew at that time that I didn't want it to just be theme parks or to be just Disney or Universal. I wanted to do more with my content. And I didn't go into anything, like I didn't say I want to be a content creator, like today's the day, I'm going to switch and I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to focus on being a content creator. That did not happen. I just kind of started posting stuff, and I did give some care into what I was doing and how I was presenting myself, but I didn't do it with the goal of I'm going to be a content creator. And when I was traveling to other places in 2020, I went to Oklahoma to visit my family, I went to Philadelphia, and then I was back in Oklahoma at the end of the year of 2020 for 4 or 5 weeks. And I just kept sharing, anything that I was doing, I just would share it. And, things would go viral on TikTok no matter where I was. And I think it had to do, of course, with there wasn't that many people doing the content creation at the time, and it was not an oversaturated market at all. So any market I went into, I could create content that would perform really well. And so I just kept at it. I knew that travel would be a focus, travel, food, and theme parks. And so I just kept going and pushing forward with it. And I was very consistent with it. And I am still very consistent, but daily posting, writing down, okay, I'm doing this for the week. This is what's happening. I'm post every single day. And then I just continued things, and we can get into, if you have questions, you can put them in the comments. I know if you've lasted this long, oh my gosh, thanks. But yeah, I can go on further about, some of the nitty gritty stuff, but everything, just kind of snowballed. So, I've worked with Virgin Voyages. We've worked with Visit Singapore, Visit Kentucky, Visit California, Travel Leisure, Marriott brands, the Ritz-Carlton, a bunch of stuff. And in those early years of creating content, that's when TJ came into my life, and he found me on a TikTok live that I was doing, I think originally, and then he stuck around, and I was in a relationship at the time, and so I had to say, no, thank you, no. And then when I was out of that relationship, then I messaged him. And long story short, we are together. So if you have questions about where TJ fits into everything, that's where TJ came into the picture. And so we need to get TJ to do a About Me. See if he can talk as much as we really don't. I only talk this much at home ever. So let's see if we can get TJ to maybe sit in front of the camera and talk. 2023, I was ready to be done with the job that I had working at the real estate firm. It was just time. I felt that position, it was the same thing every single day, every single year. It was just on the repeat there. It was just, I grew as much as I wanted to grow there, and I probably stayed there for a couple years too long, but it was what it was. I think I had some vision of what my content creation and consulting would be in the long run, so I just stayed a little bit longer there. But in 2023, I left that, stayed with them for another 6 months doing contract work. But into September 2023 is when I left my W-2 position to be completely contract. So that takes us up to now. It's kind of like my story. A little bit of personal in there, a little bit of professional. Disney has a major part in my growth, and I look at certain things. It's like key points that Disneyland trip. I should go back and we should look at what year that was, but that trip in high school, it was really a turning point because that turned something on. And then 100% Barbie at the Polynesian, which Barbie has passed, and she passed away a few years ago. But she was so kind, and I would see her throughout the years. I would make points to go visit her if I thought that she might be working. But she was like a key person that then led me to Eder, that then Eder, led me to being in Brazil, and, all of this stuff happening. So there are key points where I see people and things in my life that shaped my path. I think no matter what, I think you have to be open and not afraid. I was most afraid. There's a few points in my life when I've been like most afraid, and I think it was probably the night before I left my college program, but it was more amplified the night before I did the road trip from California to Florida, and I was moving here more permanently. Those two times are probably the times where I've been like the most afraid, or having this churning in the stomach. Not that it was at my gut to not go, it was just that churning in your gut of you're about to go on an adventure that, and probably Brazil too. I think though Brazil was, there was less of that at that point, just because I had been there, I'd already visited, I knew what I was getting myself into. When I went the first time, it was just going to be for 4 weeks, and then when I was moving there, 5-6 months later, I already knew kind of a little bit of what I was walking into. So that's my story, a lot of pieces of it, and I also say for those like parents who are watching, or if you have influence and are the guardians of young people, my parents never, they never like discouraged me from anything. They never said, "Oh, you shouldn't do that, or you should do this." They wanted me to get a 4-year degree, but they never pushed that down my throat. So I think it's important to allow your young people to kind of grow and find their own paths, but also, like kind of like push them a little bit, to get at least out the door and to be experiencing life. Like put ideas into their head that they can do that if they want to. But I'm thankful that my parents never really put that guilt on me, because I've seen other friends in other situations where like parents would have these expectations that didn't match maybe what the child wanted to do. So thank my parents for that. So this was way longer than I expected. I didn't realize I could talk like this. I said at the beginning that I'm not used to talking to the camera like this. I'm really not, but I think that it's good for me to get used to it because I do want to show up more here on YouTube and get more comfortable talking to the camera. So thank you for lasting this long on my kind of, it's not, I thought it was going to be question and answers, but it really turned into more just about me and me blabbering. But thank you so much. So the day 1 is done of Vlogmas. I will see you guys tomorrow. If you have questions, comments, put them in the comments section, and make sure you like, subscribe, all those things. Thank you so much to our Patreon members here. Appreciate you, and we will see you next time.